Okay, sorry about that. We are streaming now, and let me start the music.
Okay.
It's time for Clubhouse Chatter. Here's Norm Ordez.
Live from Erickson Studio up here in the Eola Hills outside of Amity. My first guest today is Garrett. All right, I'm not going to butcher the name like I did yesterday. It is Broshuis.
You got it.
Garrett
Perfect.
Broshuis. And Garrett was a former farmhand with the San Francisco Giants. Played in Salem Kaiser. And did you play in San Jose? I think you did.
Yeah, I played in San Jose quite a bit, actually, and then I also played, at that time, the Double-A team was in Connecticut. I was in Connecticut a ton in Double-A, and then I was in Fresno as well. Right
on. And Garrett now is out of baseball, well, kind of out of baseball. I mean, you're still kind of in it, I guess. You're part of the group that's behind a lawsuit versus Major League Baseball on behalf of minor league players due to the wages.
Yeah, it's something that guys have talked about quite a bit for many years. It's been a real problem. You get that first paycheck, and it's kind of shocking. So it's been something that guys talk about a lot. You know, the salary start at $1,100 per month, and you only receive those salaries during the season. So let's say, for instance, the season's around 5 months long. If you're at that beginning stage of your career, you make a little over $5,000 during the full season. So a lot of times during your first year, you're playing the short season because you don't start your career until after you're drafted in June. So a lot of times, most of those guys are only making around $3,000 for their first year in professional baseball. It's really tough to live on that.
You know, people see major leagues and they hear of all the money, and even on the Major League Baseball level, I mean, it's really not all that glamorous, especially in the minor leagues. The stuff that you guys eat in the clubhouses, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches are a staple. They're in every clubhouse across America. I get a lot of, former players, man, I hate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches now. And, it's crazy.
I'll never forget, the cliches really are true about the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I'll never forget my first place that I played, they had this humongous tub of Peter Pan that was probably from Costco or, some other discount store, big box store. And all he had was a small little plastic knife for the thing. And so it was fine the first week or so. But then after you start getting into the second half of that gigantic tub of Peter Pan, you start having to, reach down in there with your hand to get that stuff. And, it was just a terrible experience. And you're right, after you eat peanut butter and jelly every day as one of your main meals, you don't want to eat it too much anymore.
And you do. I mean, because a lot of these guys... you get your high round draft picks. Of course, they get the signing bonuses, but a lot of these, guys, 7th, 8th rounds down below, they don't have a lot of money. You're living in, a 2-bedroom apartment, if that, with 5 or 6 guys. You got guys sleeping on the kitchen floor. I've seen guys sleeping in the clubhouses because they didn't have any money to pay. For a place, and it's, like I said, it's about time that something like this has been coming down the turnpike for a long time. And so, where are we at right now with this lawsuit?
So it's still in the very early stages. Lawsuits like this, they're very complex. They take a while to play out. So we filed this thing about 2 months ago. Normally, around the 2-month mark is when Major League Baseball would have to respond. We've agreed to give them a little more time, though, so it'll be a short while longer before they actually reply to this thing. Usually what happens in complex litigation like this is the company always moves to dismiss the thing. So, with something like this that's never been done before, they'll put some arguments together as to why they think that this shouldn't even be in court at all. And obviously, we're confident that we're going to survive that stage. We wouldn't be bringing this thing if we didn't think it would survive this stage. And after that, then you start getting into whether this can be certified as a class action. So we are seeking to represent not only those initial individuals that we started out with on the complaint. We started out with 3, and then we added 17 more, and so we're officially at 20 right now, and we anticipate adding some more. So if we get this class certified as a class action, we would not only represent those 20 guys, but we would represent all similarly situated minor league baseball players over the past 3 to 5 years, and current players as well. So it becomes a much, much bigger action at that point. But it takes a little bit to get to that stage of it. We're in the very early stages right now.
Right. So you said that something like this has never been done. What do you mean by that?
Never been done.
Okay.
So in a couple different ways. First of all, no minor leaguer has ever challenged us. And what we are seeking to do is apply a law that was passed in 1938 called the Fair Labor Standards Act. What it did is it created a national minimum wage. So the debate that our society's having right now over whether to raise the minimum wage or not, that relates to the Fair Labor Standards Act. And so, this was passed in 1938. President Roosevelt said that part of the reason that we needed such a law is because labor shouldn't be treated as a commodity, and every single person should be entitled to at least some sort of living wage. And we think that these minor leaguers fall directly within that act. They are being treated as a commodity for the most part, or most of these guys. Like you said, there are a few high-round draft picks that do get those large signing bonuses. But we have to remember that there are 40 rounds in the Major League Draft. There used to be 50 rounds. Now, there's still 40 rounds. And so everybody after the 7th, 8th, 10th round, everybody after those initial rounds ends up getting a very, very small signing bonus, sometimes $1,000. That's all they get often. And so for those guys, not having a wage above $1,100 a month, they can't live on that at all. So that's the vast majority of guys that we are seeking to help here. And we think we have a good chance of hopefully helping them by applying these laws, establishing a minimum wage, and then requiring overtime for all the hours that they feel that they spend at the field.
So why do you think it has taken this long to do something like this?
There's probably a couple reasons. First, intuitively, if you're an attorney that's sitting on the outside, you would think that a professional baseball player wouldn't have to resort to minimum wage laws in order to have a living wage. And intuitively, you'd think they're taking care of those guys. And then the other thing, these guys are chasing a dream. And so they're very reluctant to upset the status quo. And so especially current players don't want to do anything to decrease their chances of making it into the major leagues. This is their lifelong dream that they're chasing. And even former players, a lot of them want to get back into the game, either in coaching or in scouting or in some other capacity. And so they are somewhat reluctant as well at times to upset the status quo. They don't want to rock the boat at all. So that's part of the reason it's probably taken long. And the other reason is that inflation has cut into these wages slowly over time, where maybe 30 years ago, these wages weren't below minimum wage. This probably wasn't, the wages have never been high in the minor leagues, but 30 years ago, the purchasing power of the wages then was higher than what it is now. Now, according to my calculations, the average minimum wage in the minor leagues has increased probably around like 75% in the past 35 years or so.
Wow.
And of course, inflation over that time period has risen over 400%. So the purchasing power today is much, much lower on these wages than what it was back in the 70s.
Right. Even the meal money in the minors has. They're maybe getting a couple bucks more now than what you were getting when you were playing, if that. They haven't changed very much either. I still think it's like 25 if it's a commute, and then I believe you get like $30 a day if if it's an overnight, I believe. At least when I was in Lancaster, that's what it was.
Yeah, it can be a problem for some guys. You know, they will. I know some guys have said when they're on the road, they will just sleep in not only until 10 o'clock, like a lot of guys do, but they'll go ahead and sleep in until noon, and then they'll wait until they get to the field at 1 o'clock or so to eat for the first time, just because they want to save money. They don't want to actually spend money on lunch, so they wait until they get to the field, and then they eat that peanut butter and jelly sandwich before they start BP and start their pre-BP activities, all that early work that you have to do. And then after batting practice, then they'll eat another peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and that's what they eat because they're trying to save money.
It's terrible, and I know pretty much across, you try to, get the players to eat healthy, but, you're also kind of limited in what, money-wise, what, a clubby has as well. And, so you got, your peanut butter jellies. I remember I'd put out like 4 or 5 different kinds of bread, and even in some clubhouses, they didn't even get that. They got like 2 kinds. You got wheat and white. And,
yeah, that's exactly right. I wish the teams would understand the big picture there, that if they did increase the salaries a little bit, and if they did improve the food that's provided at the clubhouse, it would actually benefit them in developing these players. Nutrition is something that most athletes take very seriously nowadays. They realize that what they put into their body matters, and they are working out much more today than what guys were 30, 40 years ago. Especially these guys that came from colleges, they're used to having people that look out for their diets, and so they are trained to eat in a certain way a lot of times. A lot of these guys that come from big college programs. And when you're all of a sudden making the amount of money that they're making, they can't eat in that healthy manner unless they resort to credit card debt, or unless they are lucky enough to be a big bonus guy, or unless their mom and dad can help them out.
Right. So, Garrett, you also wrote Life in the Minors for what was it, Baseball America? And how long did you write for them?
I actually wrote for the Sporting News before I wrote for Baseball America. I wrote for 3 seasons an online blog for the Sporting News, and a couple things they published in the print edition then. And it was a wonderful thing to do. I just ran into a writer for the Sporting News, and I said, hey, I think that the average baseball fan would like a little more information about the minor leagues, but there's just not that much out there in the mainstream media at all. And he said, well, you know what, go ahead and send me a couple writing samples. I'll pass them around the office, and we'll see what we can do. So I jotted a couple things down, and they passed them around. They liked them, and so it kind of went from there. And that was a lot of fun. I remember my first couple ones that I did, I actually had to share them with the Giants front office, and so they could screen them and almost censor them a little bit and make sure that I wasn't writing anything that would go against the company in any way. But after that, they loosened up a little bit. They realized that I wasn't out there, trying to make the San Francisco Giants look bad. But at the same time, as I went on, I tried to paint a realistic picture of things too. And especially once I started writing for Baseball America, which was during the last year or so of my career, I really wanted to portray life in the minor leagues as it really is, and I wanted to portray, the emotional experiences that guys go through too, because it can be a very stressful situation for guys to go through. You're chasing your minor league dream,
Yep.
or you're chasing your dream, trying to get out of the minors and get into the majors, and so a lot of times you're just putting so much pressure on yourself to achieve and just succeed day after day after day, and so it can be a very stressful lifestyle.
I know between you and Dirk Hayhurst, I love reading you guys, and I think my favorite story that you told was a clubhouse incident in Connecticut, and I really can't go on too much about it. I mean, if people want to read about it, check out Garrett and Life in the Minors. But it was the Mexican drum. And and knowing you guys, knowing the people involved in this story, it makes it that much, better. But check it out. It is hilarious. And I totally, as crazy as it is, I totally see it happening. And
yeah, there's some crazy things that happen in that clubhouse, as you might imagine. Anytime you get 25, 30 guys in one place and you're spending the majority of your time together all the time, there's some crazy things that happen in the clubhouse for sure.
I was telling people about Lancaster and where the visitor clubhouse sat in Lancaster, and I don't know if you remember, there was a couple of fast food joints right across the street. And I don't know if San Jose did this, but I know Dirk wrote about it, about sneaking up into the clubhouse and across the street. They would take a backpack and they would go get some burgers or tacos or whatever, and then bring them back down to the bullpen. But yeah, it gets crazy, and it was, man, it was a blast. You guys in the Giants organization, coming through Salem Kaiser and, man, it was a pretty blast. It was, like I said, it was a blast. We had a good time.
I remember Lancaster very well, mainly because the wind was always blowing out. Yep. So I have nightmares about Lancaster. My first time there, I was to be the starting pitcher the first day that we arrived, and so I get off the bus, I go out on the field, and I just see these flags just howling. I threw my glove up in the air during batting practice, and it landed about 20 feet away. So I knew it was not going to be a fun night. Ended up giving up 8 runs in 2 1/3 innings without giving up a home run somehow. There were 3 or 4 pop-ups that just landed on our infield because nobody could catch the ball at all because the wind was blowing too hard.
Right.
So I remember Lancaster very well. Suffice it to say, it's not always pleasant memories.
And I tell people, the Diamondbacks had, and all the organizations have a team psychiatrist, and, they'll make the visits and stuff like that. And usually you only see them a couple times during the season. But I remember Lancaster, we saw him 5 or 6 different times because, exactly, you had to talk pitchers off the cliff there. I believe in 2006, the team ERA for the Lancaster Jethawks was a shade under 6, if I remember right. It was like a 5.78, and as a team, we hit like 330. I mean, it was just crazy.
I believe it. It's a terrible place to pitch, and really, it can be a tough place to evaluate both pitchers and hitters for that reason too.
Right.
High desert is another place near us that's very difficult too. Same reason. And so and you're right about having the team psychiatrist around and stuff. That's something that league teams are, I think, embracing a little more now. And Dirk Slater's book actually deals with that a little bit too. The number of psychological problems that a lot of these players have, and a lot of times they're very reluctant to deal with them and very reluctant to ask for any help, and it's very hard to recognize the problem before it becomes a bigger problem.
Right. Well, Garrett, we thank you for coming on, and as this lawsuit progresses, we definitely would like to have you back on and discuss more about it. And like I said, once again, thank you for coming on.
No, I appreciate it. This is something I'm passionate about, and we think we have a good chance of helping out a lot of guys with this. Like you said, it's a problem that needs to change, and hopefully this is the first step towards realizing that change. Yeah, I appreciate your time.
Hey, not a problem. Once again, thank you, Garrett.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. So there you go, Garrett Broshuis. So I would like to announce, our sponsor, Baseballism, has given me some shirts, and I'm actually supposed to be wearing it, but it shrunk a little bit in the wash. So beautiful stuff, nice shirts. They've given us a code for 15% off their website, baseballism.com. It is Clubhouse Chatter. And also I'd like to thank Baseball Dudes. It's the hat I'm wearing. MDM Designs, who does our shirts. Bass by Pros. Who else? Gosh. Oh, Proper Cuts Barbershop. So there you go. I am Norm, producer Brian, and we will be back here in about 5 minutes or so.